The morning sun cut through the thin veil of mist hovering over the military base, casting sharp lines of light across the concrete parade grounds. Hundreds of soldiers moved in synchronized precision, boots striking the pavement in disciplined cadence. Commands echoed sharply, bouncing off the barracks walls and metal structures. Amidst this organized chaos, one figure stood out, not by height or strength, but by the aura of calm authority she exuded. Lieutenant Emily Carter, 29, had earned a reputation for both her skill and her composure. Where others rushed, she measured. Where others reacted, she anticipated. Her uniform was impeccable, her posture rigid yet fluid, reflecting a mind that never wavered, even under extreme pressure. From across the courtyard, Sergeant Marcus Harlow watched her with barely disguised irritation. He had been on the base for over 5 years, a man known for his quick temper and unpredictability. While his skill in combat training was respected, his attitude often left colleagues uneasy. Marcus had always felt challenged by Emily, not because of her authority, but because of her quiet confidence that seemed to draw respect without demand. Unlike him, she didn't need to assert dominance aggressively. That subtlety irritated him more than he cared to admit. The day began like any other, yet the tension between them had been simmering for weeks. Small incidents, a misinterpreted command, a sharp correction in front of peers, had created a subtle but growing rift. Fellow soldiers noticed the way Marcus's jaw tightened whenever Emily passed, or how he would mutter under his breath during drills. Emily, for her part, ignored the provocations outwardly, focusing instead on ensuring every soldier executed drills with precision. But even she couldn't deny the underlying tension that made the air feel taut, as if a single spark could ignite the entire courtyard. She moved among the squads, observing, correcting, and occasionally offering quiet encouragement. Her approach was efficient, methodical, and unnervingly calm. Soldiers instinctively gravitated toward her, sensing that she was both capable and trustworthy. Meanwhile, Marcus lingered near the perimeter, arms crossed, watching her with a mixture of resentment and fascination. Every time she spoke, her voice was steady, commanding respect without demanding it. It was infuriating to him, and the contrast to his own brash style only fueled the fire of his impatience. The base itself was a world of routines and rituals. The clang of metal, the whistle of instructors, the thrum of engines from the nearby training grounds, all contributed to an environment where attention to detail was not just expected, but mandatory. Emily thrived in this controlled chaos, her mind like a steel blade, honed to detect anomalies, anticipate threats, and respond with lethal precision if required. Marcus, by contrast, relied more on impulse and intimidation, often stepping over the fine line between assertive authority and reckless aggression. As the morning drills progressed, minor sparks of friction began to surface. Marcus, testing boundaries, gave a sarcastic comment under his breath, assuming Emily wouldn't hear him. But she did. She turned ever so slightly, her eyes meeting his with a calm intensity that caused him to flinch briefly. The soldiers nearby felt the tension spike. A hush seemed to fall over the courtyard, broken only by the rhythmic march of boots. No one moved, yet every movement seemed magnified under the unspoken weight of anticipation. Emily didn't respond verbally. She didn't need to. Her stare, unwavering and precise, was enough to send a silent message. Misstep and there would be consequences. Marcus scowled but forced a tight-lipped smile, masking the irritation burning beneath the surface. He returned to his position but couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched, not just by her but by the entire base. He hated it. He thrived on dominance, on forcing respect through action or intimidation. And yet, here was Emily, earning respect without confrontation, undermining his sense of control without even trying. By mid-morning, the tension was palpable. Groups of soldiers whispered quietly, exchanging glances as they tried to predict what might happen next. Some admired the calm confidence Emily displayed, while others feared the eruption that Marcus seemed increasingly likely to cause. In the corner of the training yard, instructors kept a careful eye, sensing that the friction between the two might soon require intervention. But there was also an unspoken agreement. Emily could handle herself, and anyone challenging her would soon discover why. Then came the small incident that hinted at the storm to come. During a routine weapons drill, Marcus deliberately ignored a command, testing Emily's patience. Her voice cut through the air, steady, unshakable, firm. "Sergeant Harlow, repeat the sequence properly now." There was no emotion, no threat, just authority embedded in every syllable. Marcus hesitated, caught off guard by the directness. He muttered an excuse, but the damage was done. The other soldiers saw his hesitation, noted her control, and felt the shift in power dynamics. For Emily, it was a moment to reaffirm discipline, not to humiliate. Yet she was acutely aware that Marcus's pride had been bruised. She had learned early in her career that ego often clouded judgment, and when combined with aggression, it could lead to dangerous situations. She stayed vigilant, her senses heightened, anticipating the potential for escalation. She knew every step, every word, every glance could either prevent disaster or trigger it. The base, in all its structure and order, now held an undercurrent of tension that no drill or routine could mask. Soldiers carried on, but the awareness of what might unfold lingered. Marcus's eyes followed Emily with a mix of defiance and obsession, while she moved through the formations with calculated ease, aware of the silent scrutiny surrounding her. The entire courtyard felt like a powder keg, and every soldier, knowingly or not, was standing on the edge of an explosion that was about to rewrite the dynamics of respect and authority on the base. As the morning drills drew to a close, Emily gathered her squad for a final assessment. Marcus lingered near the sidelines, hands clenched, jaw tight. Something unspoken passed between them, a challenge, a warning, a promise. The soldiers watched, sensing that the confrontation they had anticipated for weeks might finally erupt. In that moment, Emily's calm was both reassuring and intimidating. Every movement, every command, every glance carried weight. And though no one could predict the exact moment, everyone knew that the tension between the two would not end without consequence. By the time the bugle sounded the end of the morning drill, the courtyard was silent save for the fading echoes of commands. Emily's squad had performed flawlessly, earning quiet nods of approval from their superiors. But the real story was elsewhere, the silent, unbroken tension between her and Marcus. It was a tension charged with anticipation, the kind that makes ordinary soldiers hold their breath, waiting for history to unfold before their eyes. What would happen next? No one could say. But as Emily scanned the yard, aware of every pair of eyes, she knew that the moment of reckoning was near, and she would meet it on her terms. The sun had climbed higher over the base, illuminating the sharp angles of the barracks and the sprawling training grounds. The morning drills had ended, but the air still vibrated with the residue of anticipation. Soldiers carried out their assignments, yet their eyes frequently flicked toward Lieutenant Emily Carter and Sergeant Marcus Harlow. Everyone sensed it. The tension simmering between the two was no longer subtle. It was palpable, like a live wire humming just beneath the surface, waiting for the slightest spark to ignite. Marcus's resentment had only grown since the morning drill. His pride had been wounded, not by her authority, which he could begrudgingly accept, but by her effortless composure and the respect she commanded without raising her voice. He prowled the training yard like a predator packing its territory, jaw tight and eyes flicking to Emily whenever she wasn't watching. Every movement she made, every instruction she issued, every nod she received from other soldiers felt like a personal affront to him. He couldn't tolerate it, not today, not ever. Emily, meanwhile, moved through her duties with measured efficiency. She inspected equipment, reviewed squad readiness, and gave concise instructions to the soldiers under her command. Each motion was precise, practiced, and deliberate. Her mind, sharp as a scalpel, noted the glances Marcus cast, the subtle smirks he offered, and the restless shifting of his weight. She knew his temperament, quick to anger, slow to consider consequences. Her instincts, honed over years of training and experience, told her that a critical moment was approaching, and she needed to be prepared. The tension wasn't lost on the soldiers nearby. Whispers passed through the ranks. "He's looking for a fight," one muttered. "Watch him, he's going to snap," said another. Emily ignored the murmurs, but she didn't need to. Her attention was focused, her senses alert. She had learned early in her career that anticipation could mean the difference between control and chaos, and she never underestimated the volatility of a colleague like Marcus. Every step he took was a potential threat, and every soldier around her was unknowingly drawn into the web of escalating tension. Marcus decided to test her patience further. In front of a group of new recruits, he made a snide remark about her leadership. His voice carried just enough for the soldiers to hear, yet casual enough to mask direct confrontation. "Careful, Lieutenant," he said with a smirk, "or you might give orders no one really wants to follow." The words were loaded with insult, a jab meant to provoke a reaction. The recruits shifted uneasily, sensing the brewing storm. They had seen the tension, but didn't know the history. Emily turned to him, her gaze steady and unwavering. There was no visible reaction, no flinch, no rising temper, no hint of amusement. Only her eyes, sharp and unyielding, met his. The silence was deafening. Marcus felt the weight of those eyes, felt his bravado faltering under the calm authority of someone who clearly did not fear him. Around them, soldiers stopped in their tracks, unable to tear their eyes away. Some whispered to each other, others simply froze, waiting for the inevitable. "Sergeant Harlow," Emily said, her tone low but firm, "I expect all orders to be followed and respect to be maintained. Dismissed." She didn't shout, she didn't threaten. She simply stated what was required, leaving no room for negotiation. Marcus clenched his fists, struggling to contain his fury. He wanted to lash out, to assert dominance, to humiliate her in front of everyone, but something about her calmness made him hesitate. That hesitation, however brief, only fueled the storm brewing within him. The next hour was a test of patience for all. Emily continued her inspections, overseeing maintenance drills and reviewing mission protocols with the squad. Marcus lingered, occasionally stepping close, his movements purposeful yet restrained. It was as if he was circling a lion, trying to provoke it without becoming the first victim. Soldiers around sensed the danger, instinctively creating distance while keeping watch. The base, usually bustling with the rhythm of organized activity, now carried an undercurrent of suspense. Every whistle, every command, every footstep felt magnified, echoing the silent tension that dominated the courtyard. As midday approached, the situation escalated further. Marcus cornered Emily briefly near the equipment shed, speaking in low tones that carried just enough for nearby soldiers to hear. His words were laced with sarcasm, his body language aggressive, leaning forward as if daring her to respond. Emily remained composed, her expression unreadable. She maintained a respectful distance, her voice calm and precise. "Focus on your duties, Sergeant. Provocation will not change mission objectives or outcomes." Her words were deliberate, designed to de-escalate without showing weakness. Marcus's face reddened with anger. He had underestimated her, thinking she might flinch, shout, or show irritation. Instead, she had neutralized his attempt without confrontation, leaving him frustrated and exposed. Around them, soldiers sensed the unspoken power struggle, their curiosity mingling with unease. Marcus was volatile, yes, but Emily's composure created a strange kind of tension, a tug-of-war in which neither would yield, yet only one held true control. By early afternoon, the whispers had grown louder. Soldiers speculated, some betting quietly on who would blink first, others silently rooting for Emily's control to hold. The base's normally orderly routine now carried a subtle unpredictability. Even instructors and higher-ranking officers noticed the friction, though none could predict how it might erupt. Marcus's impatience was palpable. He shifted from foot to foot, muttering under his breath, testing the boundaries of her patience. Emily remained aware, never letting her guard down, every movement precise, every gesture calculated. Then, during a routine review of tactical maneuvers, the critical moment approached. Marcus, unable to contain his fury, deliberately ignored a command, attempting to disrupt the flow of the exercise. Emily's eyes tracked him, unblinking. The other soldiers held their positions, sensing that Marcus was pushing too far. The air grew heavier, the collective awareness of impending confrontation thickening like smoke. Emily's mind calculated possibilities, predicting potential outcomes, ready for any sudden movement. "Sergeant Harlow," she said, her voice carrying authority yet devoid of anger, "stop undermining the exercise. Your compliance is mandatory." Her tone was steady, unwavering, precise. Marcus's response was a scoff, a challenge, a subtle threat. The tension that had simmered for weeks reached a critical point. Soldiers exchanged nervous glances, understanding that the next actions would define more than the drill. They would define the hierarchy of respect and authority. As the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the base, Emily prepared herself. Marcus's next move was inevitable. It had been building, escalating like a storm on the horizon. Every instinct told her that action would soon be required, and she was ready. Around them, the soldiers watched, anticipating the clash, hearts pounding. Some admired her calm, others feared the consequences. Yet all understood that the courtyard had transformed from a place of routine into a stage for a confrontation that would be remembered for years. And in that charged silence, both of them knew the first act of aggression was coming, and neither would emerge unchanged. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the courtyard, turning the base into a stage where tension played out with silent intensity. Lieutenant Emily Carter stood at the center of the yard, her posture impeccable, her gaze sharp, scanning the soldiers as they executed their tactical exercises. Everything appeared normal to the untrained eye, drills carried out with precision, orders followed meticulously. Yet beneath the surface, a storm was gathering. Marcus Harlow, fueled by weeks of simmering anger, had reached the limit of restraint. The energy between them crackled like electricity, palpable to anyone paying attention. He watched her move, nodding her calm composure and unwavering control. Every nod she received, every acknowledgement from other soldiers felt like a personal affront. His chest heaved with frustration, his mind racing with anger and humiliation. Today, he decided, he would not let her authority overshadow him any longer. Every instinct screamed at him to assert dominance, to humiliate her in front of the soldiers, to reclaim the power he felt slipping through his fingers. The soldiers around them noticed the change in his demeanor. Those standing nearby instinctively shifted, forming a subtle buffer zone between the two. Some exchanged worried glances, whispering under their breath. "Something about to happen," one said, voice trembling with anticipation. Another nodded, gripping his rifle tighter, heart racing. The courtyard, usually a place of discipline and order, now held the silent tension of a battlefield about to erupt. Marcus's decision crystallized. He stepped forward, his movements deliberate, calculated to intimidate. His eyes locked onto Emily, narrowing with intent. Time seemed to slow as the soldiers realized what was coming. A hush fell over the courtyard. Even the instructors, experienced veterans who had seen countless drills and exercises, paused, sensing that a volatile situation was about to spiral out of control. Emily noticed his movement immediately. Her instincts, honed by years of training and experience, told her that action was imminent. Every muscle in her body tensed, every nerve alert. She had anticipated aggression before, but the intensity in Marcus's eyes was different. There was no hesitation, no doubt, only raw intent. She took a subtle step back, repositioning herself to maintain balance and leverage. Her mind raced, calculating angles, possible outcomes, and contingencies, yet her face remained calm, unreadable. Marcus lunged suddenly. The motion was quick, almost imperceptible, a blur of aggression aimed directly at her. The courtyard froze, the sound of boots striking the pavement momentarily silenced. Gasps erupted from nearby soldiers, some stepping back, others frozen, unsure how to react. The movement was reckless but fueled by desperation and anger. Marcus was relying on brute force and speed, underestimating the experience, training, and composure of his target. Emily's reaction was instantaneous. Years of drills, simulations, and combat exercises coalesced in a single, fluid motion. She sidestepped, twisting her body with precision, positioning herself to counter without overcommitting. Every detail of the attack, the trajectory, the force, the intent, was accounted for in her calculation. The soldiers watching couldn't believe the speed and control with which she reacted. It was as if she had anticipated every possibility before it happened. Marcus's momentum carried him slightly off balance. Emily seized the opportunity. Using a combination of leverage and tactical skill, she applied pressure to his arm, twisting it in a controlled, precise motion. A sharp crack echoed across the courtyard, the unmistakable sound of a bone breaking. Marcus stumbled backward, releasing his lunge, the expression on his face morphing from aggression to shock, then pain. The suddenness of the injury rendered him immobile for a brief but crucial moment. The courtyard erupted in reactions. Soldiers gasped, some instinctively covering their mouths in disbelief. Others whispered to each other, eyes wide. Did she just? Some froze entirely, staring at the scene, unsure if they should intervene or wait for the aftermath. The commanding officers, drawn by the commotion, rushed toward the center of the courtyard, their faces a mix of shock and urgency. Emily, however, remained composed. She did not gloat, she did not shout. Her stance was authoritative yet controlled, her eyes scanning the yard to ensure no further escalation. Her breathing, steady and measured, betrayed none of the adrenaline coursing through her veins. To onlookers, she appeared almost serene, a stark contrast to the chaos surrounding her. Her training, discipline, and presence of mind had turned a potential disaster into a controlled outcome. Marcus gritted his teeth, pain shooting through his arm as he stumbled backward. Humiliation mingled with physical agony. His aggression, once a tool of intimidation, had failed spectacularly. Around him, soldiers realized the magnitude of what they had just witnessed. This was not a simple skirmish between two colleagues. It was a display of skill, control, and courage that would be remembered by everyone present. Higher-ranking officers arrived moments later, taking in the scene with rapid assessments. Emily calmly explained her actions, detailing the precise moments leading up to the lunging attack. Her voice remained firm and professional, emphasizing self-defense, control, and prevention of further harm. Marcus, meanwhile, tried to protest, but the shock and pain left him largely incapable of coherent argument. The courtyard buzzed with murmurs, whispers of admiration, fear, and disbelief intertwining. Witnesses recounted the sequence of events in hushed tones. Some soldiers were struck by her speed and precision, others by her ability to maintain composure in a life-threatening moment. There was an unspoken recognition that Emily's reaction had prevented a much worse outcome. What could have escalated into a violent confrontation had been neutralized in mere seconds, leaving Marcus injured, and the rest of the soldiers both awed and inspired. In those moments, the balance of respect shifted. Emily's authority was no longer just acknowledged, it was affirmed. Marcus's challenge had failed not because of physical strength alone, but because of strategy, skill, and unwavering discipline. The courtyard, once charged with potential chaos, slowly began to settle. Officers began to regain control, soldiers returned to formation, and the training yard resumed its rhythm, though the echoes of the incident lingered in every corner. Emily stood at the center, surveying the reactions. Her eyes met those of a few nearby soldiers who looked at her with a mixture of admiration and awe. They understood that what they had witnessed was more than self-defense. It was a masterclass in courage, composure, and tactical expertise. Marcus, meanwhile, sat on the ground, nursing his broken arm, his pride shattered. His gaze, once defiant, was now filled with reluctant acknowledgement of the skill and strength he had underestimated. The incident left a lasting impression. Soldiers would recount the story for weeks, analyzing every move, every reaction, and every second of the confrontation. Emily had demonstrated that training, composure, and courage were more powerful than aggression or intimidation. The courtyard, once just a site of drills, had become a stage where respect was earned in an unforgettable moment of action and authority. By the time the dust settled, Emily had already resumed her duties, calm and professional, ensuring the remaining exercises continued smoothly. Marcus was escorted to medical care, a silent reminder that recklessness and aggression carried consequences. And for the soldiers who had witnessed it all, one lesson was clear. Skill, preparation, and composure could triumph over raw anger and intimidation, leaving a legacy that would be remembered long after the echoes of the crack in the courtyard faded. The courtyard was silent for a heartbeat that seemed to stretch forever. The sound of Marcus Harlow's fall echoed, bouncing off the concrete and steel of the base, mingling with the collective gasp of the soldiers who had witnessed the confrontation. 1 second ago, the yard had been filled with order and routine. Now it pulsed with shock, awe, and a hint of fear. Every soldier froze, unsure whether to move forward, step back, or remain a passive observer. The air felt thick, charged with the raw energy of a moment that would soon become legend. Emily Carter stood perfectly still, her breathing steady, posture controlled, and eyes scanning the yard. She was the calm at the center of chaos, the anchor holding everything together. Her arm had moved with precision, her training executing flawlessly in that split second. While Marcus writhed in pain on the ground, she ensured that no further harm could occur, assessing the immediate risk to everyone around. She didn't celebrate or shout. Her actions spoke volumes, conveying authority, competence, and the unshakable control of someone fully aware of their surroundings. The soldiers' reactions were immediate and varied. Some instinctively moved closer to Emily, seeking guidance and protection. Others kept their distance, startled by the sheer intensity of what had just occurred. A few whispered among themselves, struggling to comprehend the speed and skill displayed. "Did she just?" one muttered, voice trembling, while another shook his head in disbelief. Even those who had witnessed many drills and confrontations were struck by the sheer precision of Emily's response. Marcus's reaction was immediate but far less composed. Pain shot through his arm, radiating up to his shoulder. He groaned, clutching his broken limb as his expression flickered between anger and shock. His attempt to assert dominance had backfired spectacularly. The humiliation was palpable, a stark contrast to the authority Emily had maintained. Around him, soldiers whispered, some stifling laughter, others shaking their heads in disbelief. It was rare, even in a military setting, to witness a reversal of power so dramatic and so swift. As the officers rushed toward the scene, their faces tight with concern and urgency, Emily stepped back slightly, still alert. She maintained a commanding presence without aggression, ready to explain her actions while preventing any further escalation. The courtyard, once dominated by routine and drills, now carried the weight of a pivotal moment in the life of the base. Every soldier understood, silently or otherwise, that this incident would be discussed, analyzed, and remembered. The first to reach Marcus was Sergeant Major Thompson, a veteran known for his strict but fair judgment. He knelt beside Marcus, assessing the injury while maintaining a careful eye on Emily. "Get him to medics," he said firmly, motioning to a nearby squad to assist. Marcus protested weakly, his pride warring with the pain, but Thompson ignored the objections. Around them, soldiers watched intently, some inspired, others shocked by the consequences of uncontrolled aggression. Emily's eyes swept across the soldiers, ensuring no one attempted to intervene recklessly. Her mind, already processing the next steps, focused on control and order. "Everyone remain in position," she instructed calmly, her voice cutting through the murmurs. "No movement until officers have assessed the situation." The clarity of her command reassured the soldiers, grounding them in a moment of high tension. Even those closest to Marcus recognized that she had prevented further escalation, not just by skill, but by presence and authority. Whispers circulated rapidly among the troops. "Did you see that?" one soldier said to another, disbelief and admiration mixing in his voice. "She moved faster than I've ever seen, and she didn't even hesitate." Another nodded, eyes wide. "I can't believe he lunged at her like that and she just—" He gestured vaguely at Marcus writhing on the ground. The story of the incident spread almost instantly, carried by the astonished soldiers as they tried to process the rapid series of events. Emily remained steady, but internally she was running through every possible scenario for what would happen next. She anticipated questions, accusations, and a formal investigation. She knew that Marcus would try to justify his actions, that others would offer conflicting accounts, and that officers would need a clear, concise recounting. Her training had prepared her for combat situations, but it had also ingrained a methodical approach to reporting and accountability. Every move had to be precise, measured, and defensible. By mid-afternoon, the higher-ranking officers had secured the area. Major Reynolds, known for his meticulous approach to discipline, arrived to oversee the immediate response. "Emily, explain exactly what happened," he demanded, his tone firm but not accusatory. She recounted the sequence of events with clarity, detailing Marcus's lunge, her defensive maneuver, and the resulting injury. Her explanation was professional, precise, and devoid of emotion, emphasizing that her actions had been necessary to prevent further harm. Marcus, still clutching his arm, struggled to interject, but the pain and shock rendered his objections fragmented and unconvincing. Around him, soldiers continued to murmur, some exchanging glances of respect toward Emily, others glancing at Marcus with a mixture of disbelief and pity. The dynamic of authority had shifted irreversibly, and the courtyard itself seemed to acknowledge the change. Emily had not just defended herself. She had asserted control in a way that left no room for doubt about competence and composure. As the medics arrived to treat Marcus, the courtyard began to regain a semblance of order. Soldiers returned to their positions, still whispering among themselves, but now with a new awareness of the boundaries between authority, skill, and aggression. Emily resumed her duties, inspecting equipment and checking on the soldiers under her command, maintaining the balance between calm professionalism and assertive presence. Her actions had set a precedent, showing that courage combined with skill could neutralize even the most volatile threats. The incident left an immediate impact on morale. Soldiers who had admired Emily before now looked up to her with newfound respect. Some younger recruits whispered eagerly about her speed, precision, and calmness. Others, who had previously doubted her, now understood that her reputation was well-earned. Marcus's aggression had backfired, leaving him with both physical pain and diminished authority in the eyes of his peers. The courtyard had transformed from a place of routine training into a crucible of respect, discipline, and real-life consequences. By the end of the afternoon, word of the confrontation had spread across the base. Even soldiers not present at the incident were aware of it, discussing it in hushed tones and speculating about every detail. Emily's calm authority and decisive action had become a benchmark for professionalism, courage, and tactical expertise. Marcus's failed attempt to assert dominance served as a cautionary tale, a reminder that reckless aggression had consequences, even for experienced soldiers. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the base, Emily took a moment to reflect. She remained aware of the soldiers around her, the whispers circulating and the eyes of commanding officers. The incident was far from over. Investigations would follow and lessons would be drawn. But for now, she had preserved order, ensured safety, and demonstrated that calm, precision, and skill could prevail in the face of raw aggression. The courtyard, once a site of ordinary drills, would forever carry the imprint of that afternoon, the moment when courage, discipline, and quick thinking reshaped authority in front of 282 witnesses. The courtyard had finally regained a semblance of normalcy, but the air remained thick with tension. Soldiers whispered among themselves, exchanging glances, replaying every second of the confrontation. Lieutenant Emily Carter moved deliberately through the yard, ensuring her squad remained focused, all the while aware of the approaching higher-ranking officers who would oversee the formal investigation. She knew that, while she had acted correctly, every action would now be scrutinized in painstaking detail, from the split-second defensive maneuver to the subtle ways she had maintained authority during chaos. Major Reynolds, accompanied by several other senior officers, arrived with brisk, purposeful steps. His face was a study in controlled authority, betraying neither surprise nor emotion. He quickly assembled the soldiers who had witnessed the incident, instructing them to remain calm and provide accurate accounts. Emily was asked to step aside briefly to recount the events in detail. She complied without hesitation, her mind already sorting every sequence, every movement, and every decision she had made that afternoon. Sitting in the temporary briefing room, Emily explained the confrontation clearly and methodically. "Sergeant Harlow lunged at me unexpectedly," she began, her tone steady and factual. "I responded with a defensive maneuver to immobilize him and prevent further harm. My intent was strictly to neutralize the threat, not to inflict unnecessary injury." She detailed the sequence of movements, highlighting how she had anticipated the attack and used controlled techniques to subdue him. The officers listened intently, some taking notes, others exchanging brief glances as they weighed the facts. Outside the room, Marcus Harlow was being treated for his broken arm. His pride had been shattered almost as thoroughly as his physical limb. He muttered complaints, claiming he had been provoked, though the medical staff ignored his protests. News of Emily's skill and composure had already spread among the soldiers, further eroding his reputation. Those who had once respected him for his aggressive approach now regarded him with a mixture of pity and disbelief. Marcus's internal conflict grew with every passing minute. Humiliation, anger, and the dawning realization that his attempt to assert dominance had failed catastrophically. The investigation proceeded with statements from multiple witnesses. Soldiers described the events with varying degrees of detail, but one consistent theme emerged. Emily had acted decisively, professionally, and without unnecessary aggression. Her quick thinking and precise maneuvers had prevented a potentially disastrous escalation. The officers noted the reactions of the other soldiers, the shock, the awe, and the undeniable respect that Emily commanded. Even those who had been skeptical of her abilities admitted that she had handled the confrontation with exceptional skill. Major Reynolds paused, considering the reports. He was a man who valued discipline above all else, and yet he recognized the nuances of human behavior and training. "Emily Carter," he finally said, his voice calm but firm, "your actions prevented a serious incident from escalating. The evidence shows that you acted within protocol and your composure was exemplary. Your training, judgment, and skill were clearly demonstrated." A murmur of approval passed through the assembled officers, a subtle acknowledgement of the rare combination of talent and poise Emily had displayed. While the officers discussed the formal consequences for Marcus, Emily returned to her squad, continuing her duties with quiet authority. She monitored the soldiers' reactions, aware of the ripple effect her actions were having. The younger recruits looked at her with awe, while more experienced soldiers nodded in respect. Whispers circulated. "She's the real deal," one said, eyes wide. "That was perfect execution," another added. The incident had become an impromptu lesson in composure, skill, and the importance of preparation under pressure. Marcus, meanwhile, grappled with internal conflict. His physical pain was matched by a bruised ego and growing resentment. He replayed the confrontation in his mind, analyzing where he had gone wrong, where he had underestimated Emily, and why his aggression had failed. In that quiet, painful reflection, he realized that respect could not be demanded through intimidation alone. Emily had demonstrated that courage combined with skill, patience, and strategy carried far more weight than raw anger. His frustration intensified, but he could not deny the truth. Back at the base, the officers deliberated on disciplinary measures. Marcus's repeated history of aggression and refusal to adhere to protocol were factored into their decision. Suspension, mandatory counseling, and reassignment were discussed as options, balancing accountability with the potential for rehabilitation. Emily's role as a model officer became a point of emphasis during the deliberations. Her actions highlighted the importance of leadership, restraint, and the ability to maintain authority without resorting to aggression. The base's culture and expectations would be shaped by this incident for months to come. As the day progressed, soldiers began to process what had happened. The story of the confrontation spread like wildfire through the base. Each retelling emphasized different aspects: the speed of Emily's reaction, the precision of her defensive maneuver, the audible crack that signaled Marcus's broken arm. Every soldier who had witnessed it, directly or indirectly, understood that the balance of respect had shifted irrevocably. Emily had not only defended herself, but had redefined the parameters of authority and discipline in front of 282 soldiers. Emily took a brief moment alone, reflecting on the day's events. She acknowledged the seriousness of the incident and the consequences that would follow, both for Marcus and for herself. Her mind replayed each decision, each movement, evaluating the effectiveness and precision of her response. Though outwardly calm, she recognized the responsibility she bore, not just to maintain her own authority, but to serve as a model for the rest of the soldiers. Leadership, she knew, was as much about example as it was about command. The investigation concluded formally by early evening. Marcus's disciplinary actions were clearly outlined: temporary suspension from active duty, mandatory behavioral counseling, and reassignment to a less sensitive post. The decision sent a clear message to all soldiers: aggression without control has consequences. Emily's report and testimony were commended, and her exemplary handling of the incident became a case study in leadership, training, and composure under pressure. By the end of the day, the courtyard had regained physical order, but the emotional and cultural impact of the incident lingered. Soldiers reflected on what they had witnessed, reassessing their understanding of authority, courage, and discipline. Emily's actions had elevated her standing, transforming her from a respected officer into a symbol of skill, control, and unwavering professionalism. Marcus, despite his previous standing, had become a cautionary tale, a vivid example of the consequences of unbridled aggression. As night fell over the base, Emily returned to her quarters, carrying the quiet weight of the day's events. Her mind was alert, yet calm, already considering how the incident would influence her squad, her peers, and her future interactions on the base. She understood that leadership required constant vigilance, the ability to anticipate threats, and the discipline to act decisively without hesitation. Today, she had demonstrated all of these qualities in front of hundreds of witnesses, forever altering perceptions and expectations. Even as the lights of the base flickered on, casting long shadows over the parade grounds, soldiers would continue to discuss and analyze the confrontation. Emily's composure and skill were now etched into the collective memory of everyone present. Marcus's aggression, by contrast, served as a powerful reminder that reckless anger and pride could not overpower training, preparation, and courage. The incident would be studied, recounted, and remembered for years, a defining moment in the careers of everyone involved. The day after the incident, the base buzzed with quiet anticipation. Soldiers moved about their routines, but the events of the previous afternoon lingered in every conversation, glance, and gesture. Emily Carter had returned to her duties, her posture and composure undisturbed by the widespread attention she now commanded. The incident had already become more than a fleeting confrontation. It had become a symbol of authority, courage, and tactical skill. Every soldier who witnessed it, and even those who only heard of it, felt the ripples of her actions reverberate across the base. Marcus Harlow, meanwhile, faced the stark consequences of his impulsive aggression. His temporary suspension meant he would be removed from active duty, forced to confront not only his physical injury, but also the impact of his behavior on his reputation and career. Behavioral counseling sessions loomed ahead, designed to address the underlying issues that had fueled his repeated acts of defiance. Even those who had once admired his aggressive style now regarded him with cautious distance, recognizing that his unchecked temper had been his downfall. Emily's squad, however, experienced a very different dynamic. Morale soared in the wake of her actions. Soldiers who had previously questioned her authority now looked up to her with renewed respect. Her ability to neutralize a dangerous situation without escalating violence, her unflappable composure, and her precise execution became lessons in discipline for the entire unit. Whispered conversations among the soldiers emphasized admiration for her skill, with many recounting the exact moment she had countered Marcus's lunge. "I've never seen anyone react like that," one recruit admitted. "It was perfect. Calm, precise, unstoppable." Higher-ranking officers took note as well. Major Reynolds called a briefing to acknowledge Emily's actions formally. "Lieutenant Carter," he said, his tone both professional and approving, "your conduct during yesterday's incident was exemplary. You demonstrated the perfect combination of training, judgment, and composure under pressure. Your actions prevented what could have been a serious escalation, and you set a standard for all personnel to follow." There was a moment of silence as the significance of his words sank in among the assembled soldiers. Formal recognition followed shortly afterward. Emily received a commendation for her decisiveness and professionalism, and her report of the incident was included in training materials for other units across the base. Her handling of the situation was studied not only for the defensive techniques she employed, but also for the example of restraint and clarity of thought under pressure. She did not seek accolades. Her focus remained on duty, discipline, and leadership. Yet the recognition served to cement her position as a respected leader among peers and subordinates alike. The incident also prompted a review of protocols regarding conduct, aggression, and chain-of-command compliance. Officers emphasized that Marcus Harlow's behavior had been unacceptable and that any future attempts to circumvent protocol would meet with serious consequences. Emily's actions demonstrated that courage and skill were essential, but so was adherence to procedure and discipline. The base, normally a place of strict routine, now carried a heightened awareness of the delicate balance between authority, personal pride, and collective responsibility. Marcus, confined to his quarters and limited in mobility, grappled with a mix of humiliation, frustration, and reluctant acknowledgement. His physical pain was matched by the realization that Emily had demonstrated far greater competence in a critical situation. He replayed the confrontation repeatedly, analyzing every mistake, every underestimation, and every misjudgment. The contrast between his aggression and her precision was impossible to ignore. Slowly, he began to understand that respect was earned through discipline, courage, and skill, not through intimidation or brute force. Among the soldiers, stories of the confrontation spread rapidly, growing in detail and impact. Even those who had not been present for the actual event could describe Emily's movements, Marcus's failed lunge, and the precise way she neutralized the threat. Her reputation as a model officer grew daily, and her squad benefited directly from the morale boost. Soldiers became more attentive to training, more respectful of protocol, and more inspired by the example set by Emily. It was a ripple effect that strengthened cohesion, focus, and mutual trust among the troops. Over the following week, Emily's influence extended beyond her immediate squad. Officers incorporated her incident into leadership discussions, highlighting the importance of situational awareness, composure under pressure, and the calculated application of skill in high-stakes moments. Training exercises began to include simulations inspired by her actions, emphasizing both defensive tactics and the necessity of maintaining calm control. Soldiers internalized the lessons. Authority alone is insufficient. It must be combined with preparation, courage, and clear-headed judgment. Marcus's return to active duty was delayed until he completed both physical rehabilitation and behavioral counseling. By the time he rejoined the unit, the incident had already become a defining story within the base. He returned with a humbled demeanor, a cautious approach, and a grudging respect for Emily's authority. While resentment lingered beneath the surface, he could no longer deny the effectiveness of her actions and the respect she commanded. The incident had irrevocably shifted the dynamics of power and authority within the unit, and Marcus's role would now be defined by restraint rather than unchecked aggression. Emily, for her part, remained focused on her duties, quietly observing the morale shift around her. Soldiers approached her with questions, seeking guidance, reassurance, or even small details of how she had maintained control during the confrontation. She responded with professionalism, emphasizing the importance of training, preparation, and maintaining composure. There was no arrogance in her demeanor, only the quiet authority of someone who had acted decisively in a critical moment and was now guiding others toward excellence. The courtyard, once a stage of routine drills, now carried a lingering sense of the pivotal events that had unfolded there. Soldiers walked its paths with a heightened awareness, mindful of their conduct, and inspired by the example of courage and composure demonstrated by Emily. Even those who had been skeptical of her abilities acknowledged the lesson. Skill, discipline, and quick thinking were more powerful than aggression and intimidation. The base had been reshaped, subtly but irrevocably, by a single act of decisive leadership. By the end of the week, Emily's story had become legendary among the soldiers. Recruits retold the account with wide-eyed fascination, while experienced officers discussed it with admiration and respect. Marcus, recovering physically and mentally, could not escape the lessons of that afternoon. For the first time, he truly understood the weight of discipline, the value of composure, and the meaning of earned respect. Emily had demonstrated that leadership was not about dominance. It was about courage, skill, and the ability to act decisively when it mattered most. The commendations, official recognition, and widespread admiration cemented Emily's role as a central figure within the base. Her example influenced not only the immediate unit, but also the broader culture of training, leadership, and discipline. Soldiers internalized her lesson. True authority is a combination of preparation, composure, and the courage to act decisively under pressure. The incident with Marcus Harlow became a cornerstone story, shaping expectations, behavior, and morale for months to come. Even as normal routines resumed, the impact of the confrontation continued to ripple through the base. Emily's actions had not only prevented disaster, they had elevated the standards of leadership, reinforced the importance of discipline, and inspired countless soldiers to strive for excellence. Marcus's humiliation and the consequences he faced served as a cautionary tale, while Emily's calm authority became the benchmark for what every soldier could aspire to. The courtyard, once ordinary, now carried the legacy of a decisive moment that had reshaped the entire base. Weeks had passed since the confrontation that had left Sergeant Marcus Harlow with a broken arm and Lieutenant Emily Carter commanding widespread respect. The base, normally a place of strict routines and rigid hierarchies, now carried a subtle yet profound change. Soldiers walked with a heightened awareness of discipline, respect, and the consequences of their actions. Emily's decisive response to the attack had become more than a story. It had become a living lesson in composure, skill, and leadership. The younger soldiers especially were captivated. Recruits who had initially been intimidated by Emily now regarded her with a mixture of awe and aspiration. During training exercises, whispers circulated. "Watch her stance," one said, pointing subtly as Emily moved among the ranks, overseeing drills. "Notice how she reacts without panic," another added. Her presence alone became a form of instruction, teaching the soldiers how to embody calm authority, how to anticipate threats, and how to maintain focus under pressure. Marcus, meanwhile, was undergoing physical therapy and behavioral counseling. The injury had forced him to confront not just the pain in his arm, but the consequences of his pride and aggression. Initially, he resisted the guidance, resentful of the humiliation and restricted activity, but gradually, under careful supervision, he began to understand the depth of Emily's skill and the necessity of restraint. Each day, as he struggled through exercises to regain strength, he also reflected on the incident, recognizing the lesson in patience, preparation, and the true meaning of respect. Emily's squad noticed the subtle changes in Marcus. Where once he had dominated through intimidation, he now approached interactions with caution, often deferring to protocol and procedure. Though his pride remained, it was tempered by the experience of his failure. For the soldiers around him, this transformation served as a vivid reminder: authority is earned, not demanded. Emily's influence had extended beyond her immediate actions, shaping the behavior and expectations of her peers, even those who had once resisted her authority. The officers of the base formally recognized the broader impact of Emily's actions. Major Reynolds initiated a series of workshops and briefings, using the incident as a case study for leadership training. Soldiers were asked to analyze the sequence of events, identify critical decision points, and discuss the importance of composure, anticipation, and professional skill in high-pressure scenarios. Emily, without seeking the spotlight, became an instructor, guiding discussions and providing insights from her perspective. Her calm demeanor and clear explanations helped soldiers internalize lessons in a way that textbooks or simulations never could. Throughout the base, morale shifted. Soldiers reported feeling more confident, more disciplined, and more cohesive as a unit. Emily's example encouraged them to prioritize preparation, communication, and tactical thinking over aggression and impulsivity. Even those who had previously doubted her leadership found themselves inspired, motivated to emulate the calm authority she had demonstrated. The courtyard, once a stage for drills and routine exercises, had become a symbolic space, a reminder of the power of courage, skill, and restraint in defining authority. Marcus's return to active duty was a carefully monitored process. His reintegration into the unit was met with mixed emotions. Some soldiers were skeptical, others cautiously supportive. Emily observed silently, ensuring that interactions remained professional and that tensions did not reignite. She understood the delicate balance. Marcus had the potential to either learn from the experience or repeat past mistakes. Her vigilance, calm presence, and subtle guidance helped maintain the equilibrium, demonstrating the broader leadership lessons she had imparted through action. The incident also reshaped how training exercises were conducted. Instructors incorporated simulations inspired by the confrontation, emphasizing both defensive techniques and the strategic use of composure under pressure. Soldiers were taught not just how to respond to aggression, but how to anticipate it, neutralize threats efficiently, and maintain authority without escalating conflict. Emily's actions became the gold standard, a template for behavior that combined courage, skill, and professionalism. Socially, Emily's reputation solidified across the base. Soldiers sought her advice on personal challenges, leadership dilemmas, and tactical concerns. Her ability to navigate high-pressure situations with calm efficiency made her a trusted confidant, a role model, and a source of inspiration. Even informal conversations carried lessons. A glance at her posture, the measured tone of her instructions, or the confidence in her decisions provided a template for young soldiers striving to grow in both skill and character. Marcus, despite lingering frustration, gradually accepted Emily's influence. He observed her interactions with the soldiers, noting the respect she commanded not through intimidation, but through consistent, measured action. Slowly, he began to internalize the lesson he had resisted. Authority and respect are earned through competence, composure, and courage. His transformation, while incomplete, demonstrated the long-term impact of Emily's decisive response, not just on the immediate confrontation, but on the culture of the unit as a whole. By the time the next major training exercise commenced, the entire unit exhibited a new cohesion. Soldiers moved with confidence, coordination, and awareness, informed by the lessons of the confrontation. Emily oversaw the exercise with her characteristic calm, providing guidance, corrections, and encouragement where needed. Marcus participated fully, cautiously applying his skills without reverting to aggression, showing gradual improvement and a newfound respect for procedure and authority. The incident that had once caused shock and fear now served as a foundation for professional growth and unit cohesion. The story of Emily's actions continued to circulate beyond the base. Other units requested briefings, seeking to learn from her example. Her tactical skill, combined with composure under pressure, became a benchmark for leadership training. Even those who had not been present for the original confrontation studied her methods, internalizing lessons in decision-making, restraint, and professionalism. Emily's influence now extended far beyond her immediate squad, shaping training, expectations, and morale across multiple units. As weeks turned into months, Emily's legacy continued to solidify. Soldiers reflected on the pivotal moment when Marcus lunged, and she responded with precision. The memory of her calm authority, her controlled reaction, and the lesson in earned respect remained vivid. It was a defining event, one that shaped not only individual behavior but also the broader culture of the base. Marcus's gradual transformation, the heightened morale, and the training adaptations all underscored the profound and lasting impact of a single, decisive action executed with courage and skill. By the end of her rotation, Emily had become a symbol within the base, not just for her technical skill, but for the embodiment of leadership under pressure. Soldiers who had witnessed the confrontation spoke of it with admiration, recruits aspired to emulate her example, and instructors incorporated her approach into ongoing leadership programs. The incident, once a moment of tension and conflict, had evolved into a cornerstone lesson, shaping behavior, inspiring courage, and setting a new standard for professionalism. Months had passed since the confrontation that had defined the atmosphere of the base. Lieutenant Emily Carter's decisive response to Marcus Harlow's reckless attack had become a permanent story etched into the memory of every soldier present that day. What had begun as a single moment of tension had grown into a defining lesson in leadership, composure, and earned respect. The courtyard, once the setting for drills and routine exercises, now carried the symbolic weight of a pivotal turning point for the unit. The base operated with a renewed sense of discipline and morale. Soldiers moved with increased confidence, coordination, and awareness, guided by the lessons of Emily's actions. Training exercises incorporated scenarios emphasizing quick assessment, defensive tactics, and controlled responses to unexpected aggression. Every movement, every decision, every interaction was subtly influenced by the example she had set. Soldiers no longer relied solely on brute strength or intimidation. They learned to anticipate threats, respond decisively, and maintain composure in high-pressure situations. Emily herself continued her leadership with the same calm authority that had defined the confrontation. Her presence alone inspired focus and discipline. Recruits and seasoned soldiers alike sought guidance, not only for tactical instruction, but also for understanding how to carry themselves with confidence and integrity. Her influence extended beyond immediate instruction. She had become a living example of how professionalism, courage, and preparation intersect to produce effective leadership. The story of her actions was recounted in informal gatherings, tactical briefings, and leadership seminars alike, often serving as a teaching tool for new soldiers entering the base. Marcus Harlow had returned to active duty after completing his rehabilitation and counseling. His demeanor had changed significantly. Where once he had relied on aggression and intimidation to assert authority, he now approached interactions with measured caution and respect for protocol. The incident had left an indelible mark on him, forcing him to reevaluate his approach to leadership, interpersonal relationships, and self-discipline. While lingering pride still challenged him, he understood that true respect was earned through skill, composure, and effective decision-making, lessons he had learned at the hands of Emily's example. The formal recognition of Emily's actions continued to expand. Officers praised her decisiveness, composure, and adherence to protocol. Commendations and official reports highlighted her ability to manage a volatile situation with precision and care. Her actions became part of the training curriculum for soldiers across multiple units, illustrating how calm authority, tactical skill, and rapid decision-making could prevent disaster. Emily's example reshaped the expectations for leadership at the base, emphasizing not just the enforcement of rules, but the importance of strategic thinking and disciplined response under pressure. As the weeks progressed, the morale and cohesion of the unit improved noticeably. Soldiers were more attentive, more cooperative, and more motivated to learn from Emily's example. Younger recruits, inspired by her composure, approached training with increased seriousness and determination. Seasoned soldiers, once indifferent or skeptical, now respected the lessons she imparted through both instruction and example. Marcus's gradual transformation further reinforced the cultural shift, demonstrating that even those who had resisted discipline could adapt and grow under the influence of skilled leadership. The courtyard where the pivotal confrontation had occurred remained a constant reminder of the incident. Soldiers passing through often recalled the precise sequence of events: Marcus's lunge, Emily's calm reaction, the audible crack signaling the broken arm, and the rapid control of the situation. The memory was vivid, serving as a symbol of the broader principles Emily had demonstrated: composure, preparedness, and effective execution in critical moments. It was not just a place of drills anymore. It had become a monument to courage and professionalism, a tangible representation of the lessons learned. Even the interpersonal dynamics among the soldiers shifted in meaningful ways. Respect for authority became linked not to fear or hierarchy alone, but to demonstrated competence and composure. Younger soldiers observed Emily's interactions with her peers and superiors, noting how she combined empathy with firmness, encouragement with expectation. The incident with Marcus served as a backdrop, a constant reminder that leadership required more than confidence. It demanded skill, judgment, and the courage to act decisively when the stakes were highest. Months later, during a formal ceremony recognizing exceptional leadership within the base, Emily was honored for her actions. Officers and soldiers alike applauded, recounting the incident and highlighting the lessons it imparted. The commendation emphasized her skill, courage, and unwavering adherence to protocol, praising her for preventing a potentially serious escalation. Emily accepted the recognition with quiet humility, acknowledging her team and the soldiers who had supported her throughout the tense moments. Her actions were celebrated not for personal glory, but for the enduring impact they had on morale, cohesion, and the standards of leadership. Marcus attended the ceremony as well, his arm fully healed, demeanor noticeably changed. While a residual tension remained, there was a sense of mutual respect between him and Emily. He had learned a lesson that could not be erased by time. Authority must be earned through competence, composure, and ethical action. The acknowledgement of Emily's skill and judgment reinforced this lesson, providing a benchmark for his own growth and future conduct. As the base continued its routines, the story of that confrontation became part of its collective memory. Soldiers, both new and experienced, recounted the event during training, shared anecdotes, and discussed the lessons learned. Emily's example shaped behavior, expectations, and leadership practices for months to come. It was a story of courage, skill, and unwavering professionalism, a moment in time that transformed individual behavior and the culture of the entire unit. In the quiet moments, Emily reflected on the journey. She had acted in the moment, relying on training, judgment, and composure. The consequences of her actions extended far beyond that single encounter, shaping lives, attitudes, and expectations. She understood the responsibility she carried as a leader, not only to execute orders and maintain discipline, but to serve as a living example of courage, professionalism, and ethical action. The confrontation had tested her, but it had also reaffirmed the principles she had dedicated herself to uphold. The incident, once tense and chaotic, had evolved into a symbol of resilience, preparation, and earned respect. Emily Carter's actions demonstrated that leadership was more than authority. It was the embodiment of skill, courage, and composure under pressure. Marcus Harlow's journey reflected the potential for growth and adaptation, even in those who had once resisted guidance. The soldiers who had witnessed the confrontation carried its lessons forward, shaping the culture of the base and inspiring future generations. As night fell over the base, the courtyard lay quiet, its shadows long and still. Yet the memory of that pivotal day lingered, etched into the minds of all who had been present. The story of Emily Carter and the confrontation with Marcus Harlow had become more than a tale of conflict. It was a legacy, a testament to the enduring power of courage, skill, and professional integrity. In the hearts and minds of the soldiers, it remained alive, guiding their actions, shaping their character, and inspiring them to embody the same calm authority and decisiveness that Emily had displayed in that unforgettable moment. The base had returned to routine, yet nothing would ever be the same. Soldiers walked taller, acted with more confidence, and respected authority not for its title but for the skill and composure behind it. Emily continued her service with quiet determination, knowing that the lessons she had imparted through action would resonate far beyond the immediate unit, shaping the culture, morale, and leadership of the base for years to come. The story, once a moment of crisis, had transformed into a lasting legacy, a story of courage, professionalism, and the enduring power of decisive, ethical action.